So our first speaker is Chris Kozak. Chris is a professor in the Department of Chemistry, and he's going to share some of his creativity that he used in his course over the last little while. Over to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Ruth. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I don't seem to be muted. That's great. I'll try sharing my screen. I do have a little bit of a PowerPoint slideshow here. So very good. Can everyone see my presentation? Is that coming through clearly? Excellent. Great. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about some creative chemistry that I incorporated into my course, Chemistry 1050 at Memorial. I like to call it turning STEM into STEAM. So using creative chemistry assignments with art, music, and writing, also known as putting art into science, technology, engineering, and math. And this came about, of course, during the pandemic when we were all forced to migrate over to remote teaching. And I love teaching first year chemistry. It's one of my passions. I usually teach first year chemistry or a senior level, more specialized course in their fourth year or fifth year. So I do like to see students who come through our undergraduate program at the start and then at the end of their undergraduate career. So I come into this always thinking, well, everyone loves chemistry, right? This is why you're in this course. But that's not always the way. Lots of students are doing first year chemistry because it's a requirement to move on to another program. They may be interested in pursuing careers in health sciences. Not everyone's interested in research. But my take home is hopefully people, once they've come out of my course, if they don't develop a love of chemistry, at least they develop an appreciation for it. And they realize that chemistry isn't as scary, isn't as bad as people make it out to be. Because as chemists, we often, when people ask us what we do for a living, and we say, oh, I'm a chemistry professor, I do chemistry research, then we'll get a couple of different responses. Usually one is, oh, I hated chemistry in high school. And my response is, well, unfortunately, you probably didn't have the right teacher because chemistry is an exciting subject. So the challenge was in a remote program is keeping students engaged with fun activities and to show them that chemistry is everywhere. Chemistry can be beautiful. And as is the case in all sciences, participation is critical. We talk about, science is an experimental process. It is by definition an experiential learning process. And this was the big challenge of moving to remote teaching from in person, because in person we can do experiments, the students have labs, there are hands-on experiences. In my lectures, I use whiz-bang demos. I have a class every Friday during the semester where I call it Blow Stuff Up Fridays, where I'm not necessarily always blowing stuff up, but it's some really engaging demonstration to show theory and practice. And because of moving to remote teaching, we lose that opportunity for the touch, the smell, the feel part of chemistry and of science research. And a lot of the experimentation is creative. Creativity is built into discovery. And therefore, I was looking for another outlet or opportunity for students to make use of this creative aspects. So one way I looked at it is science communication, and science communication takes many, many forms. So therefore, I came up with a series of creative chemistry assignments which I called hashtag Chem1050art for posting on social media. So I had several different projects made up, and I created little infographics for them. One of them was to have the students make a TikTok video. And the premise behind the assessment of all of these was the science had to be sound. The students could use many different media to communicate their scientific learning, their chemistry learning, but the chemistry had to be sound. They couldn't just make stuff up. And it had to be original. They couldn't copy what was already out there. So quite a few people, scientists in particular, are really taking to TikTok to promote their research, to promote their research teams, to promote their discoveries. So I thought this is a great option for doing it. And I thought also the age group that I'm teaching, these students are all going to be quite TikTok savvy, which I found wasn't really the case, which was quite fun. So some of the comments I got back from students was, oh, I was never into TikTok and now I'm addicted. And I'm like, okay, well, hopefully I haven't created a monster here. But the task was describe an aspect or role of chemistry in your life. So make it personal. And the forum was to create a short video on TikTok, and they would upload it to Brightspace. They didn't have to make a specific TikTok app video, but a TikTok style video. They could, they could use any forum. It would be graded based on originality. And if they did post it to social media like Twitter, I would give them a bonus mark because that's, again, promoting public awareness of science. There was a very fixed due date. And I did also offer a perk to students where we were teaching remotely. And a lot of students did confess to me that they were feeling a little bit lonely and missing their colleagues. I said I would organize a virtual coffee chat with me, or quaffing with a chemist, or quaff with your prof sort of session online where students could bring a beverage and we could have an online chat and talk about life skills and development of their non-chemistry education. So I give them a very short summary and, create your TikTok, upload your TikTok, and then vote on your favorite. So by posting it onto a discussion board on Brightspace, students could vote for their favorite TikTok video or TikTok style video. So for students who weren't so video savvy, but were visually creative, I also offered them an opportunity to create an infographic about chemistry in their everyday life. So infographics are wonderful because they can present sometimes very complex ideas in a very simple visual way. So very bullet form, image forward, that sort of approach. And there's a wonderful website called compoundchem.com where Andy Brunning presents loads and loads of examples. In fact, he's published several books of these infographic style summaries of chemistry of everyday life. And they're a wonderful introduction to chemistry for non-specialists because they actually do contain a lot of very accurate chemistry, but they don't overwhelm you with equations and things like that. So again, the task was to create an infographic of any aspect of chemistry in your daily life, upload it to Brightspace in a suitable format, and students were graded based on use of color, creativity, of course, chemical accuracy, and suitable topics for the public. And this one, I encourage students to work on individually. Some of the projects they could work on with a partner, such as the TikTok video. A third option I gave students was to write and record a song that relates to chemistry. And this one I found had a surprisingly high number of uptake. Newfoundlanders really are musically gifted. It's true. So I was really pleasantly surprised by the originality and the creativity here. So again, write a song about any topic relating to chemistry. And this is one that I allowed students to work on with a classmate. And of course, the music could be original. So some students wrote their own songs, played it on their own accompanying instrument, whether guitar, ukulele, piano, etc. Or it could be sampled, so they could do some fancy digital sampling. And their submission was a recording. And if they wanted to record a video of them singing the song, they could do that as well. And they could share it to the Brightspace Dropbox. And in this case, because I think it really, writing a song and singing a song really puts yourself out there, I gave all brave submissions 5 out of 5, essentially, if the science was accurate that they were presenting. So this was a small number of people did put forward very, very nice songs here. And then there were students who were more interested in the traditional writing style of communication. So one of the assignments was create a one-page chemistry-centered public interest story. So here they were asked to write an article for a public understanding of science segment, as would be found in the media. So again, a short essay, 1,000 words, no more. If they wanted to use graphics in there as well, they're encouraged to do that. And they could upload it for me to read. And again, the top 5 to 10 submissions were invited for a coffee chat with me. And I was very, again, pleasantly surprised by how many gifted writers there were. Because one thing I found is when I ask students about why they chose science is they often say, well, I don't like writing, and science doesn't have a lot of writing in it. And my response is, well, science has to be written, because if it's not written, if it's not communicated, it's not done. Effectively, it didn't happen if it wasn't communicated or shared in some way or another. So sharing that information in the various forms of the media that we have was critically important. And then lastly, I offered them an opportunity to do something completely artistic. So either visual, audio, theatrical, graphic based, so a true chemistry art. So this one I left entirely up to them. I said, let your creative spirit fly here. And most people did choose a visual project who followed this. So again, they would come up with a graphic such as the one shown here to illustrate what chemistry means to them. So representations of what chemistry is or what a chemist is. and share that with their colleagues, with their classmates. So I'm just going to present a couple of very quick examples here. So here's a TikTok video of two students. There is a soundtrack here, so hopefully people can hear it in my screen share. Can you hear the audio? Is it coming through? Great. And again, the chemistry is accurate. They're talking about sodium bicarbonate, how it generates carbon dioxide. Sucrose breaks down to glucose and fructose once heated. And they end up making some very delicious looking cookies, talking about the chemistry of everyday life, the chemistry of baking. And baking really is a science because your ingredient ratios have to be precise. You can't just eyeball it because if you don't get the ratios right, it doesn't come out correctly. Oven temperatures are important. So that's an example of a little TikTok video. Other students choose more of a visual medium. So for example, here's a comic book that was created by one of the students, The Magnificent Molar Man and the Revenge of Dr. Atomic, talking about atomic theory, noble gas theory, etc. Another graphic was a student who was very heavily into manga and Japanese graphic art, decided to create a family portrait of the noble gases. And there are a lot of subtleties in these images that relate to the science that she understood. So helium is the lightest and brightest of the noble gases. So that's represented by the fair princess, followed by the dandy, the duke. That's neon. Neon is one of the bright noble gases that we use in making neon signs. Followed by argon, which is the sleeping duchess. So argon comes from the Greek word for lazy, because it's so unreactive. So argon is the lazy, sleepy duchess, followed by krypton, the hidden one. So the counts is hidden. What's interesting in the background is the colors all correspond to the frequency of the line spectra of the individual noble gases. So there's scientific content here. Xenon, the stranger, is a fascinating one. My personal favorite is radon, the alchemist, because radon is a radioactive element and it transmutes from one form to another as it undergoes radioactive decay. So it effectively performs alchemy. And the last example I'll show is another cute little video prepared by a student on explaining how essentially how soap works. So I'll just present a very quick little segment here. So this cat's eating a greasy hamburger. By the end of the meal, it has oily, greasy paws. It tries to wash its paws with water, but to no avail because oil and water doesn't mix. So the student then goes on to show that soap has the properties of being miscible in both oils and water, and therefore soap is what we can use to clean our hands. So I'll stop this now because I see I'm running out of time here. But basically all the chemistry that's being presented here in this cute little video is accurate. And it's done in a very creative way. So this is one of clearly a very gifted student who does a lot of graphic design and visual arts as her hobby. So she loved this aspect of bringing her hobby of creative artistry into her passion, which is also science.
That's awesome, Chris. Thank you.
So I'll just wrap it up there by saying the outcomes that came from this is science communication is often very visual, and students engaged in self-directed learning to come up with these projects. They worked on their writing skills. We know science needs good writers, and they use social media to promote science, which is most often the forum that people get their information from these days. So thank you.
It's a really different way of exploring assessment and really hitting that home with the students and their preferences for sure. You could have went on for the full hour, I'm sure, Chris. There was one question for you in the chat. How many students did you have in your class?
Good question. So I had a section of 100 students. So Chemistry 1050 has several different size sections. They range from 100 students to 250 students, depending on the lecture theater to which we're assigned. So I like my section. 100 is, big enough to keep things interesting. So you do have a good mix of students, but also small enough that you can develop a good rapport with a core number of students who want to develop a closer relationship with their instructor.
Okay, John, we're going to keep your second question for the end unless you want to respond within the chat, Chris. But we will move on to our second set of presenters that we have. So we have Karen Goodnow and Saka Azam from the Faculty of Education, and they're going to speak about the potential for the high flex learning environment. So I'll hand things over to you.
Hey, can everyone hear me? We're okay. Okay, thank you very much, Ruth. And thank you so much, Chris. That was great, fantastic. Always good to see faculty offering, instructors offering students choice in assessment and learning activities. And choice will be one of the things we'll talk about here. We're all sort of used to teaching face-to-face. We're all accustomed now to teaching fully online and also adapting different formats in between. Zyka and I are science/STEM educators in the Faculty of Education. I haven't been teaching students directly for the last almost 3 years, but I have been in a role where I'm supporting people who are teaching. So Zyka and I have been chatting, and I know I had visited Zyka's class 3273 a couple of times and noticed that not only was she, this is upon our return to campus and offering face-to-face courses. So not only did I notice that she was working and facilitating face-to-face in the classroom, but she was also trying to accommodate students who could not be in the classroom, physically present, online through WebEx. So I discovered about a year ago, somewhere I heard about this approach or learning environment called HyFlex. And the term is a combination of hybrid and flexible. So in discussions, we said, let's apply for some tile funding and let's explore the HyFlex model in different ways. So let me first of all explain our understanding of the HyFlex model. Maybe we could move to the next slide, Zyka, please. Not sure if that's possible. Yep, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. So once again, as I said, we're accustomed to fully in-person teaching. Many of us have developed courses for the online environment, but there are courses in between. Sometimes we teach face-to-face. It's supported by technology. We may have some classes online. I've discovered that blended can mean a lot of different things to people. And then we have hybrid models where we plan ahead, and so many classes may be face-to-face and so many classes may be online. So the HyFlex approach or HyFlex model offers students choice in the modalities through which they learn. So as an instructor, you can offer in any class, any week, any month, students have the option of attending class face-to-face. They may attend synchronously, or they may complete learning activities and assessment activities asynchronously. So what we want to explore from our perspective as instructors and how we structure our courses. So our course, we're going to choose one course and implement this project in the fall semester. We want to see how this affects the design of our course, and especially our learning and assessment activities, as well as how it affects our behavior in the classroom in terms of an interactional space. I mean, we have the physical space, but we want to look at how we interact with our students, how students online and face-to-face interact with each other, and also look at their perspectives after they've completed the course. Now, if you're interested in the HyFlex model, there is some research around the approach. It's very preliminary at this point. The person that is credited with discovering HyFlex is Brian Beattie, and you might want to check out his book that was published in 2006. So he advocates core principles. Now, you may find HyFlex goes by other names at other universities. So there are a number of universities who are trying this. One core principle for HyFlex is learner choice. So learners decide themselves, do they want to complete this course completely online asynchronously? Do they want to come to class? for each session? Do they want to do some sort of combination? And we know that students have many responsibilities. So there might be times that they can't come to class or they're sick, such as having COVID. Therefore, they opt to complete a class asynchronously or synchronously. A second core principle is equivalency. And that may be very challenging for the instructor. We want to target whether the learning environment is online, virtually, synchronous, asynchronous, or face-to-face. We want to target the same learning outcomes. However, sometimes it becomes challenging. We know we can't create exactly the same learning experiences. We want some equivalency there. A third core underpinning principle of the approach is reusability, which means artifacts that are generated by the instructor and by students can be reused in the future and also posted online. Now, there are some ethical issues I know around recording students in classes if we were to record lectures, so we would have to get permission to record particular students in a particular class if we were to share the videos in the future. So there are some ethical concerns around this approach as well. And accessibility. We want to try and design a course that meets the needs of all learners if possible. And fundamental for Zyka and I are principles of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and trying to embed them in the practice. So we still want to have a high quality course that's student-centered, that's experiential, that adheres to these principles. Now, we have not done this before. This is new. This is new for us. So this is very much will be a small pilot project that we're running in the fall semester. Zyka has, once again, as I said, she's designed her course such that materials are available face-to-face. It's supported by technology. Students can join through WebEx as well. But we haven't considered all three modalities in the design of our course. So once again, we will be trying this out in the fall semester. So once again, our goals are to find out students' perspective when we have choice, and also to look at the interactional space that's created as we implement the course. You know, there has been some preliminary research that shows that often some instructors may ignore their online students and not connect the online students with the face-to-face students. From my perspective, I think it will, you know, some aspects of this will be challenging. And I think there'll be an additional input of our time and energy to prepare this course, offering the three modalities. So there are some things you need to consider when you're designing a HyFlex course and implementing a HyFlex course. Look at your technology requirements. We're very fortunate to have Morris Barry to support us. He's our coordinator in the Teaching and Learning Commons, so he will help us there. We will also hopefully have a student in the classroom who can monitor, it could be a research assistant or another student, who will monitor the online chat when we're facilitating synchronously. So you have to, you know, we're operating in a STEM, we call it our STEM room in the Faculty of Education. It has a $12,000 camera. So we're well situated with the technology. We will be buying some other technology to support the implementation of the HyFlex course. Also, I mean, there are a number of challenges. Chris, you mentioned a few in terms of online instruction, you know, the engagement. So we're hoping that students will still be engaged based on, you know, the feedback we get as we're implementing. We don't want students checking out. It may result in increased instructor workload, certainly a possibility. And we want the communication to be effective. So whether the students are in class face-to-face, we're communicating with them or between students in the face-to-face physical environment and the online environment, we want the communication to be effective. And another challenge, of course, you know, is the comfort level of the instructor. So if this is something that we want eventually to encourage other instructors to adopt within Memorial, there might have to be lots of professional learning around doing this. We're just sort of exploring this on our own right now. We do have support, but in terms of an approach, I'm not sure anyone at MUN has tried it. And if they have tried it, we would certainly welcome their feedback and would like to learn from their experiences. And of course, we know that a lot of students need to be highly self-regulated to operate in an online environment. So that becomes a challenge and a consideration for instructors. So we're excited about the project. Zyka, did you want to add anything just for a moment? I know we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, no, I think you have covered most of the things. I just wanted to bring an example of equity here. You talked about, when I was trying to, not actually the hybrid model, but trying to accommodate students online as well as face to face. So I just realized I had a student who had some hearing issues. And so she wanted support anyways. And this actually, when I was setting up online meetings, she was getting a lot of support because due to mask, she was not able to lip read. So closed captions were actually, so this was kind of acting as a UDL model. So I was planning it for different reasons, but she was getting a lot of support. And it was easy to engage that student in learning.
Hi, Karen. I'm just going to call out. We have one individual. I hope I say your name right. Momo Jamo has their hand up. I'm not sure if you want to go ahead and ask your question quickly.
Do you want me to end the PowerPoint, Karen? So we
Sure.
to stop sharing and then we can.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead with your question, please? Oh, the hand is down again. No, okay. There was a quick question in the chat for you. If students can move between two course options, do you have to sync them? John,
can you elaborate when you mean sync them? Do you mean, I'm not clear on what you mean.
Sure. John, did you want to quickly ask your question?
I just meant if you want to offer the courses in two forms and want to let students move back and forth between the two. So
yeah, and actually it'll be three forms, right?
Right, so three forms. If you want to offer it in three forms, you'd have to pace the course the same in all three forms, right?
Yeah, there would have to be timelines. Yes, there would have to be timelines and guidelines so that people are completing assessment and learning activities, at a similar time frame. Because we're not individualizing the course.
You mentioned that they could move between the forms, right?
Yes.
So they might decide for one of the term to be a certain form and the other term to be another form. So the three forms would have to track the same way, right?
Well, yeah, they'd have to be aligned for sure. So for example, if one of our classes, I was going to say inquiry-based teaching and learning is a core topic in our course, and there's many ways to promote inquiry. And, we might look at one example is the learning cycle. So, depending on the amount of time we spent on that would have to be sort of completed and attended to at a similar point in time by all people, depending on whether they're in class, coming synchronously or online.
All right, thank you, Karen and Saika. We're going to move on to our next presentation. And again, we can certainly come back again if we have time at the end for some additional questions. But we're going to move now to Keith Gadbo-Keeney, who is an instructor and PhD candidate in sociology. And he's going to share a little bit about the other side of the classroom. Over to you, Keith.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm just going to share a presentation. All right, I think everyone should be able to see that. I'll start my show. Okay, yes, all right, that seems to be coming through just fine. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Keep Kupukini. I'm a PhD candidate in sociology here at MUN. I want to begin by socially locating myself in terms of my privilege. This is one of our habits in sociology. I come from a white settler. I'm a white settler. I come from a French and Irish background. I'm in my early 30s. My pronouns are he and him. I come from a background that would be considered lower middle class. I'm the first in my family to pursue graduate education. I have no significant history of medicalization or psychiatrization. I do not identify as being disabled. And so, these are all very normative social locations to come from. And as such, I recognize that I enjoy a significant amount of privilege in my work and in my academic work, in the way that people interact with me and the expectations that are placed upon me, particularly the students, as far as the students are concerned, and that sort of thing. And the other thing about my presentation here is that, um, you know, it's a little more theoretical and a little more abstract in terms of this presentation arose from a series of conversations that I had with my supervisor over this semester as I was talking to her about becoming a first-time instructor and what that was like. So this presentation really sort of it elaborates on the experiences of changing roles from being student to instructor, and the methodological approach that I draw upon here is one of autoethnography to better understand the teaching landscape of the classroom at this critical juncture. And so I chose autoethnography because it's useful as a methodology because it draws on people's personal beliefs and experiences. It shows people in the process of figuring out what to do, how to live, and the meaning of their struggles. And so the scope of activities within this transition from student to instructor ranges from, the typical things one would expect, such as writing essays, participating in seminars, and working to meet course standards, to then crossing the classroom, and that's kind of the term that I've been using to think about this experience. Um, Crossing the classroom and becoming an instructor with all of the responsibilities to teach, facilitate discussion, create a sense of belonging, and to evaluate the progress of students. And to explore this changing role, I've undertaken to understand my own roles within the culture of the classroom setting. First, drawing upon um, the experiences as a PhD student, engaged in coursework and all of the regular activities of a student one would expect, and then moving to my experiences as a new instructor, being appointed to teach and to lead my own classes. The academic classroom, it exists as this liminal space, a space where students enter into and leave as they move through the different phases of their lives. And in this regard, there's a transitory nature inherent within the specific liminality of the classroom. It's often a space to facilitate the next step out of academia, primarily for students. However, it is a liminal space for instructors as well, but in a different way, because it remains a constant site and central orientation of their academic journey, first as a student and then as an instructor. And for the student, this space is a place to gain knowledge and to meet friends, to have debates and to discuss ideas. It can become a familiar space, but it lacks any kind of permanence, despite the feelings that some students may have as lectures tend to drone on. Um, it lacks permanence because the student knows that in 3 months or so, they will hand in their final essay or write their final exam, and they will no longer have to come back. They will transition on to the next phase, either progressing, another year into more advanced classes or graduating from the university altogether. And so for instructors, the classroom space is less transitory, both as a space one regularly visits and also as a site of interaction and knowledge creation. And it is this concept of transition that is key here and one that I keep returning to. And so transition functions in this way to denote the change from student to instructor. And within this transition, there is another concept that I draw upon, mainly that of liminality or the liminal space, which I've already mentioned. And so liminal spaces are a kind of threshold and represent ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stage of a rite of passage, when participants no longer hold their pre-ritual status but have not yet begun the transition to the status they will hold when the rite is complete. And so for those of us in academia, in graduate school, it's usually that transition from the graduate student to then, the junior faculty member and that sort of thing. During the rite's liminal stage, participants stand at the threshold between their previous way of structuring their identity, time, or community, and a new way of being. The idea is that completing this rite of passage facilitates the end transition out of the liminal space and into this new space of knowing. So there are any number of recognizable events in graduate school that can easily be conceptualized as rites of passage, such as finishing comprehensive exams, finishing a dissertation proposal, publishing an article, defending a thesis, all of these easily recognizable things. These are all recognizable landmarks on the academic horizon, but teaching one's first class, I argue, occupies an altogether different space. All of the events that I listed have a similar element that is necessary for rituals of passage, namely being guided through. You have a supervisor or a committee or an editor, someone to offer guidance and orientation as one journeys into this ambiguous space. But with teaching, this is frequently not the case. I won't say it's not always the case, but it's frequently not the case. In most universities, there could be classes or workshops to provide some kind of guidance for graduate students beginning the process of teaching their own classes. And I just want to, give a quick mention to the Teaching Skills Enhancement Program here at Memorial, which I took part in and which is fantastic. Or one could argue that there are TAing opportunities that can provide a kind of bridge to transition from student to teacher. However, the issue here is, while the workshops or classes might exist at some schools, there's certainly not a universal practice. And going further, even when they do exist, they're also not a required practice. So, students don't have to undertake them. And as for teaching assistant opportunities, there is some merit here, I think, that they can function as a kind of bridging experience, with graduate students being given the opportunity to interact with undergraduate students, to mark assignments, maybe give a guest lecture, that sort of thing. However, it varies from professor to professor what the graduate student's responsibilities might be. And because the professor is still ultimately responsible for the classes, the TA often does not have a real experience of what it is like to lead their own classes, or to have that responsibility of student expectations and delivering the course lectures and that sort of thing. So my point here being, and I'm starting to wrap things up, but my point here being is that where almost every other aspect of the university experience would contain some measure of this rite of passage and guidance, being a first-time teacher lacks the same treatment. It's often akin to being thrown off the deep end, as it were, with the graduate student finishing their comps and now appointed to teach a class on their own. And speaking from very recent firsthand experience, it is terrifying, but not necessarily terrifying for the obvious reasons of public speaking in front of a room of undergrads, though of course this can be anxiety-inducing to be sure. The part that is a little terrifying for me has to do with the level of responsibility inherent in the role, in the power one has to make unilateral decisions in terms of course design, assignments, grading, text selections, etc. And I know that there can be some variation between the faculties and that sort of thing. But in sociology, my experience has been, fairly free hand to design the course, to choose the text, to design the assignments in how I wanted them to be. There was not much of a curriculum to follow. When I was an undergrad, I remember speaking with a professor who talked about how undergraduate students lack the moral authority to teach in a classroom. And I wasn't sure what this meant at the time. And to be honest, I'm still not fully sure what it means. But having recently finished teaching two of my own classes while still having the status of graduate student, and honestly, very little training or preparation for what teaching my own classes would be like, I think I have somewhat of a better understanding of this idea of moral authority. And it has to do with trust. The trust that students place in us as instructors when they enter the classroom. They trust that we will be knowledgeable, fair, that we will shepherd them through the semester. It's a trust that begins first with the idea of the instructor and then progresses to the in-classroom lived experience. So how does this moral authority and trust relate to liminality? And I'm still kind of trying to figure that one out. But one part of it for me is that it has to do with the rite of passage from student to instructor. And I'm starting to think that teaching a class can represent this rite of passage more so than almost any other of the aforementioned examples, such as publishing or defending a thesis. And while there may be a lack of preparation or guidance, I've also started to see that this is part of the rite itself, going back to the metaphor of being thrown in the deep end. This is where people can sink or swim. And this was the experience for me that began to solidify my identity as an academic. This was the experience that communicated the level of responsibility I had attained. And this is something that I'm still working on untangling through this process of self-reflection and of autoethnography. All right, thank you. All done now.
Okay, thanks, Keith. I appreciate that, and it's a good segue into Marina's session as well. I think what we will do is we'll save Rita's video and I'll share it with the group through the Brightspace site, and we'll figure out how we can add it to our YouTube channel to incorporate it as a part of the presentation. But I do want to ensure that we give Marina her 10 minutes so that she can offer her presentation. So I'll stop talking and hand things over to Marina Graneva, and she's going to speak about developing 21st century skills in graduate students through her involvement in our Learning Technology Coach program. So over to you, Marina.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen now. So good?
Yes.
Okay, so the concept of 21st century skills is rather broad and not easy to define, and predictions about what kind of skills, what skills exactly will be required in the future differ considerably. The terms themselves that are used to refer to such skills are overlapping, not concise. In some papers you see soft skills, in some you see transferable skills, non-cognitive skills. However, most researchers agree that skills that graduate students require to succeed in academia, and more importantly after graduation, are first of all critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, then a bunch of interpersonal and intrapersonal skills, including communication and collaboration. So in this presentation, I will demonstrate the results of a short survey that I administered to gain understanding of if and how Learning Technology Coach program projects help graduate students who work as tech coaches gain and enhance transferable skills. So let me move on to the next slide here. So what is Learning Technology Coach program and who are Learning Technology coaches? This is a fairly new program that was implemented by Center for Innovation, Teaching and Learning at Memorial approximately a year and a half ago. And that is a program, that's the initiative that has proven to be very successful from different perspectives. So what do tech coaches do? Tech coaches support the implementation of a variety of learning technologies for online, remote, and now in-person teaching as well. So initially it was mostly for online and remote teaching. Now it's in-person as well. Learning technology coaches support instructors with using various Brightspace tools, WebEx tools. They also create instructional and promotional resources, prepare and conduct workshops, and investigate new teaching and learning technologies that instructors are interested in testing and implementing in their courses. So in this presentation, I will focus on only some aspects of LTC's work. LTC, that's the acronym that is used for Learning Technology Coach. So I will talk about two types of projects that coaches are involved in. That is designing and conducting workshops and creating instructional and promotional resources. So in the past academic year, learning technology coaches have designed and conducted a number of workshops and webinars for a variety of audiences, including instructors, graduate students, and CITL staff members. For example, in the fall of 2021 and then winter 2022, tech coaches conducted workshops on the use of Brightspace tools specifically for TAs. The workshops were conducted in collaboration with the School of Graduate Studies and as a part of TATP program. Then in the fall 2021, tech coaches designed and conducted a webinar on the educational uses of Google Apps. Then the most recent workshops were designed and conducted during the Open Education Week in March 2022, and one of them, and we're really proud of that, the one on the use of H5P to create interactive learning objects, was open to global teaching and learning community. So creating instructional and promotional resources alongside with designing and conducting workshops, tech coaches design, create and conduct, create a lot of instructional and promotional resources. Some examples of promotional videos that tech coaches have created this academic year specifically, these are two video teasers of screencasting technologies, PowerTune and Screencast-O-Matic. They are available on the LTC's YouTube playlist. Some examples of instructional resources, to be more exact, how-to guides for instructors, which are available on the technology resources site. For example, that's a video tutorial on how to download class sessions from WebEx, class recordings, or for example, how to copy or customize an existing Brightspace widget. And there is a number of other resources available there as well. So coming back to the topic of the presentation, learning technology coaches are Memorial University graduate students. And one of the goals of the LTC program aligns very well with one of the most important goals of Memorial Schools of Graduate Studies, which is, I'll quote here, developing diverse skills and competences to be successful after graduation and contribute to society in a meaningful way. So there is a number of programs for graduate students, as it has been mentioned in the previous presentation, that help graduate students develop these transferable skills. So my goal, as of a learning technology coach program supervisor is to make sure that graduate students who work as learning technology coaches have opportunities to acquire and develop these transferable skills. So based on the recommendations of the Academic Council of the School of Graduate Studies, as well as in alignment with the Teaching and Learning Framework, a number of transferable skills, to be more exact, 3 broad categories have been identified. These are learning and research skills, management and responsibility skills, and communication and teamwork skills. And in order to see whether and how working as a learning technology coach helps graduate students develop these transferable skills, a brief survey was conducted in which tech coaches were asked to reflect on the experiences, first of all, of designing and conducting workshops, and second, creating instructional and promotional resources with relation to developing these transferable skills. So these transferable skills were broken down into 3 major categories, which I have just mentioned. And then the categories were broken down into comprehensive lists of competences. So for the sake of time, I'll skip the statistics. And what I'll share with you, and I think that would be the best way to do it right now instead of showing the numbers, I will share the feedback of learning technology coaches. So what do they think themselves? What do they say about the value of the program for them as learning technology coaches? So for example, designing and conducting a workshop on H5P helped learning technology coaches improve their project management skills, broaden their outlook, and look at e-learning from a different perspective. Designing and developing a workshop for the Aldrich conference, that was also a new experience for us, and hopefully we will keep collaborating with the conference committee. So it helped the LTCs involved in the project improve their research and content creation and delivery skills. They also had a chance to gather and analyze feedback from the participants. And at the end of the day, they did have a great sense of accomplishment, as you can see from the quote. LTCs are now working on the ePortfolio project, where they have to revise and test the instructional resource for students, look at the tool from the perspective of an instructor, as well as working on the project was directly related to their professional goals. And it was positively correlated with the increase of motivation to succeed in the field. So coaches who are working on the project, they want to be teachers in the future, they're teachers to be. An LTC who created how-to video for technology resources site reported that the project helped them improve their graphic design and video editing skills, and also made them realize the importance of collaboration with and learning from colleagues. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways from this feedback part of the presentation. So I'll wrap up here for the sake of time. If anybody wants to learn more about the Learning Technology Coach program or connect with a Learning Technology Coach, feel free to message me, send me an email, and we'll chat more about the topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marina. So we have 4 minutes, and I know we didn't give a lot of time for questions to our presenters, but I'll open the floor now. If you want to speak, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you, or you can pose your question in the chat and I can bring it forward if you prefer. Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think it was addressed and I missed it, but how does one go about applying for a technology coach for a course? Andrea, oh no, sorry.
Yep, go ahead, Marina.
If you want to use the assistance of a learning technology coach, you can either email me or you can go to the, we have a page, learning technology coaches have a page on the CITL website. Ruth, if you can throw it in the chat, that would be really helpful. Then I will connect you with a coach who would be able to assist an instructor either in preparing for a course, or we've recently started a new practice actually. When we just started the program, coaches were just connected with instructors through WebEx sessions and helping them. But now we can send the tech coach to the first classes, kind of backup, help instructors with whatever is required. And it can be either in online courses, it can be in face-to-face courses, it can be in whatever model you are using. What we've figured out based on all this, months of the program, those instructors who have used the assistance of tech coaches, they come back to us and we establish this long-term relationship. I've got a tech coach who started with us at the very beginning of the program a year and a half ago. And there's a couple of instructors who started working with them back then, and they are still working with them. So they're coming back, and that's a pretty successful collaboration, I should say.
Thanks, that's great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Rita Ujunwa, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Archaeology, Memorial University, Newfoundland. And the title of my talk is Nobody is Special. So this talk came out of my personal experiences and my idea of teaching and how I put it on and how it worked. So, and first, teaching to me is kind of double faceted. It's a passion and is a career challenge. I'll say it's a passion because I think my hobby is studying and sharing what I studied. So I, in other words, like to teach. So my idea of teaching and learning is that I think it came out of being able to create an environment where everyone is free to bear their mind and also free to absorb whatever is being said. Therefore, I proceed in an environment of equity, diversity, and inclusion as the core of my teaching strategy. So, because I believe in the capabilities of teaching that enables a movement against any odd or beyond any barrier. So I think everybody should feel equal in a learning environment. So from my first experience as an international student, new to Canada, this is my first time of being in Canada and in Newfoundland weather and everything. So I will say I was overwhelmed. I didn't have the balance. I didn't have the soft landing. I always felt floating, and it was a big shock to me because everyone was different. I will say I am the only, I was, and I'm still the only Black in the Department of Archaeology. So I saw that everybody was different from me. Probably not just because of color, but because the idea seems familiar. In whatever they say in the class, they seem to know everything that is being said. And examples that we're being given in the classes are something they are familiar with. Some ideas I've not even heard it before, some things I've not heard it before. And it's coming from a place that probably I started feeling, are you sure you belong here? Are you sure? So at that point I felt floated, and I will say a normal person should have anxiety or fear, even trying to say something, you will always be pushed back to think, is what I'm going to say going to be accepted? Is it something that they want to hear? Will I say something? Will I be criticized? That's unconscious fear would definitely play a role in your life. So at that time, I really felt out, and coupled with the weather environment that was stroking me, then I was feeling sick and up and down. But in the classroom or around my learning environment, I really felt I needed help. So, but I don't really know how to go about it. I don't even know how to start and all that. But because I am resilient, I didn't just give up. I didn't just try to think, oh, I don't belong here, or I'm not going to make it, or that. I felt that I need to do something. Because at that point, I was seeing myself as I'm the only learner here. Everybody knows everything. Probably they're just waiting for their certificate time to mature. So they pick the certificate and go. So I'm just the only person that is trying to learn a new thing. So I decided to get myself involved. I decided to get myself included. I included myself, literally. So I started spending more hours before class to read about ideas, examples that are outside my zone, like outside my African context that I came from, outside what I was studying. I started being a voracious reader in class titles. So when I came to class, I always come with class with a lot of ideas. I did this not because it was fun, but I did it to be included. I did it so that I can have what to say in class. Not just because contribution in a class carries a mark, but because I don't want to feel out. I really want to be on this table. So that was what I started doing. And then when I started raising ideas in class, people were like, wow, that's cool. I've not heard that before. So I started feeling that balance. Oh, they have not heard this before. We're on the same lane, you know? So, and also I started engaging some of my profs in my department. I will really say they are really cool. Some of them, I started telling them how I feel, and they were calming me down. They were telling, oh, we are all doing this together. You're going to pick up and all that. So I started talking to people outside classroom, trying to be people's friends, just to tell them I need help, I need to feel involved. And some of the technological stuffs that probably I've not seen before, I've not used before, I try to always say, I don't know this. So, but probably this is me being sincere. Some student might not really agree not to know things, or maybe they feel people are going to laugh at them, or people are going to make them feel like they're naive. But I wasn't ashamed, because I know that I am in a university to learn. If I'm perfect, I wouldn't be here. So there was this need and support, the need for support that I started craving, and I was getting it at some point, and I was always asking for assistance and reference, and it was coming. I remember I had to go out of my box to do this. Nobody did it for me, right? So that's why I say I'm resilient. So a lot of international students might just live with it. They might not talk about it. They might feel dejected. They might not just discuss it. So I can say right now I'm on my wheels. I've got on my wheels. So when I got on my wheels, I was already excelling. I finished my coursework and excellent grades. I did my comms in the pandemic, and did my proposal, and it was good. And I'm really doing well. And a lot of people are like, you're really doing well right now. Then I remember the days when I wasn't doing well. Well, I was filled with fears, whether I'm going to fail, whether I'm going to succeed, whether being the only Black in this department is why probably I'm not going to succeed, So a lot of stuff. And when I started teaching, I started putting all these experiences and how I persevered into practice. And I tell myself, nobody is special. We are in this together, and everybody's trying to figure it out. Especially everybody around me. Everybody has something to figure things out. Nobody knows it all. So when I started teaching, I planned my course to be engaging to students, to foster collaborative learning, to value personal experiences, and to decolonize our mind. Because this is part of what I felt that it was a hindrance to me coming out fully, and it was a hindrance to other international students that I see don't come out, but they come to the back and discuss it. We're like, oh, they don't even talk about us and all that. So I put it in my course, and I allow students to tell their personal experiences, to tell to generate their own idea, how they feel about a particular topic we're discussing in a class. So I know there is a traditional way of teaching, which entails to cover the material. But my goal is not just to cover the material. My goal is to help students to retain the information beyond their examination. So as someone who has persevered, and I think I'm doing well, so I feel there is a need to create an opportunity for individual ideas, not necessarily individual color. Because a lot of students are actually hiding because they don't know how to come out. So I tried this. I tried to make my students feel equal and free to bear their mind. And it was successful because I got lots of ideas. Students were saying things from their own perspective, how they feel. And the course was something that it was very, very interesting to be in my classes, and how I allowed them to talk. Some of them were giving examples from what they get from social media, and then you relate it to the topics in the class, and you see that they are never going to forget this fact. So, and another point I did was I started seeing myself, and I would take this to some of the profs in my department that are very close to me. So we started seeing ourselves as the chief learners in a class. We all started thinking and trying to learn in the classroom, not necessarily teaching, but putting yourself in the students' shoes to really understand how they feel and how they want this thing, how they want this information to come to them. So I think that's what I want to share with this conference. And I think Memorial University has a maximum number of international students, and I really think this is very important. If all course instructors and professors should create a free and equal space where all the students, including professor, will be free to bear their mind. Thank you very much for listening.